morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today I'm very excited to kick off the episode with yet another giveaway from our friends at Dolby Atmos. Yes, Dolby is very proud of their Dolby Atmos technology, which is being utilized by many of the top films hitting theaters today. For instance, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, Gravity, both the theatrical release and the recent Silent Space edition that just came out on Blu-ray, which was another giveaway. Dolby has given us giveaways for all these movies. We just had one for Avengers Age of Ultron, also utilizing Dolby Atmos sound technology. And today the movie in question is American Sniper, which has just come out on Blu-ray, and yes, utilizes Dolby Atmos technology, and in a very unique way, similar to the Silent Space situation with Gravity. But this was for the theatrical release, where there was no musical score, so Dolby Atmos technology was crucial in creating the soundscape that Clint Eastwood wanted for his movie. And Dolby actually has given me an interview. There's a link in the video description. It's a written interview with the sound team for the movie, if you're curious to see exactly what they wanted to achieve and how they did it. And so again, this is a giveaway opportunity, so I have 3 copies of the Blu-ray to give away to you. And we're going to do the usual rules for this, which is where you're going to tweet me and Dolby Atmos, so your tweet has to say @Grace Randolph and then include hashtag Dolby Atmos, and then with the rest of the remaining characters, because we're making it a challenge for you, that's why we're taking so many characters away, but you give your 1-sentence review of the movie. Now, I would hope that you'll be very respectful. I know that American Sniper is a bit of a hot-button issue, as is Chris Kyle, the subject of the film. And remember, if you're tweeting me a 1-sentence review, I'm assuming you want a copy of the movie. And I think that if you have problems with American Sniper, then I would just ask you to respectfully sit this one out. But I know a lot of you like the movie. It was one of the biggest hits of the year. It was nominated for many Oscars, and then I think politics might have had a little bit of a hand in it not winning any. But it's a good film. I felt it was the new Davy Crockett. I think it's worth adding to your collection. So I hope to see some of your tweets online through Wednesday. That's when we're going to make the deadline for this competition. So tweet me @Grace Randolph and then include the hashtag Dolby Atmos and your 1-sentence review for American Sniper through the end of the day on Wednesday, and I'll announce the 3 winners on Thursday morning right here on the show. All right, so that's the first story of the day, or actually in lieu of the viewer question. So let's move on to the top news stories this Monday. We have some interesting ones, but one got a lot of attention because many of you were very sad that late on Friday, Tron 3 died. Yes, they were thinking of making a Tron 3. We talked about it right here on Morning Movie News. And on Friday, it was decided by Disney not to move forward. And Disney said, hey, we never officially greenlit it. These are just some talks that were going on. It's not our fault that everybody, like Olivia Wilde in particular, went to the press and was like, I'm making Tron 3. We never said for sure we were making Tron 3, and we decided not to do it. And I think that this is a direct casualty from Tomorrowland. I think that because Tomorrowland failed to do, really failed to do well at the box office and capture people's imagination, I think that Disney feels that a similar sci-fi type property is in a direction they want to go in right now, especially considering the budget of Tron 3 would likely have to have. But I actually think they dodged a bullet on this one, and they had no business greenlighting Tron 3 in the first place, particularly with the exact same creative core team as Tron Legacy had, right? I mean, Tron Legacy had a horrible number of problems as a movie. Up until they broke through out of the arena, I thought it was one of the best movies I ever saw. I remember sitting in the theater being like, wow, they have really something special on their hands here. And then when they broke out of the arena, I was like, no, they don't. Or they have something embarrassing on their hands here. I mean, it was just a mess. And I think Joseph Kosinski, the director, has not proven that was an anomaly for him, because I think Oblivion, which he made with Tom Cruise, had similar problems. He's a visually stunning director, but perhaps he'd be better utilized in production design than in helming any movies. And then I think Olivia Wilde and Garrett Hedlund are just really not stars, and I don't think they have any star power to bring to the box office for this. Now, some of you might say, we've been having this argument a little bit about how important are movie stars to a project. Well, sometimes if a concept is strong enough, yes, you don't need them necessarily. But it's always nice to have one friendly face, one familiar face in there. That's what George Clooney was supposed to be in Tomorrowland, but then, of course, they should have done the research and seen that George Clooney has never brought in anybody to the box office, into the theater. And I think that you need someone like that here. And I think and especially because I think Tron Legacy was such a mixed bag. If you're going to convince people to take a second, a third chance with the property, because this would be the third film, you need somebody, who can go in there, because it's a trust issue. And you go, oh, well, that actor usually makes movies that I like. Or at the very least, I know I'll enjoy that person's performance. And that's what you need. Now, they were considering adding someone, and it's very interesting. They were thinking of adding Jared Leto, even though they never even approached him. But the reporting for this says that he was something that Disney was considering adding to the film, which I think is hilarious, and they might have also scrapped it because he seems to be already kind of doing his own Tron version with the Joker over in Suicide Squad, right? He's got the Tron lighting effect with his Joker mobile. He kind of had, with the no eyebrows and the electric green hair, he kind of does already look like he walked out of or drove out of a Tron movie. So I doubt he'd want to revisit that type of aesthetic so soon again, and also to potentially dilute the Joker, which I'm sure Jared Leto is hoping to play again and again in many DC movies. Just like Ben Affleck is on the set of Suicide Squad, or was last week, filming, his little cameo or role in the film. I think they want to have a lot of crossover, just like Marvel does, but if they can maybe even make it more meaningful. I mean, Black Widow, I think, has the best crossovers to date. Everybody else just kind of has like quick little, like one or two scenes. I think Black Widow is utilized the best, but I think for Civil War we're seeing people utilized a little bit more because Captain America movies, he gets a lot of help with the heavy lifting there. But I think that if DC can, really master the crossover aspects, that will help them and help them catch up to Marvel a little faster than maybe they would otherwise. So I don't think Jared Leto would have said yes. So I think that this is all largely due to Tomorrowland, and I also think because the package was just too weak to begin with and never should have been greenlit in this capacity. I think the only way I would have made a Tron 3 is if I had a new director, and probably I would replace the two leads as well, or at least one of them. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Oh, the other comment I wanted to add here, just glancing at my notes. I do hope Disney doesn't become risk-averse to original properties after Tomorrowland's flop. I think that Tomorrowland had a lot of problems that were obvious from the onset. I think a number of us hoped they would be fixed when we saw the actual movie. They were not. They were actually even worse than we anticipated. But I don't think anybody from the ad campaign felt, this is going to be a winner. I think we all had our problems with it, and I think that a lot of people went in there because of Brad Bird, having faith in him. He was almost the star of that movie. You can have star power these days behind the camera as well with directors, and I think Brad Bird's going to take a hit for that. But I think that Disney shouldn't be against original ideas. I think they just should make the effort to make sure those original ideas are good to begin with and then well executed so that they have the best shot possible when going on the big screen. I mean, look at San Andreas. That's an original story and franchise, and did very well at the box office this weekend because you know what? It's just a good movie. All right, so now to the second story of the day. We have a comic book movie news story, but it's not the one that you would usually expect, and that's that The Lumberjanes has been picked up or optioned as a movie by Fox. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be made. It means it's moving into the development stage. They're putting a script together. Boom Studios is the publisher. And just full disclosure, Boom Studios is the publisher of my comic book, Superbia. And Boom has a sweet little deal with Fox, all-inclusive across all different mediums. And they're doing a really good job of getting their properties into development. So I think that, Boom, it merged with Archaea to become this really powerful entity. And I think that with Image, I think those are the two, because, there was The Waking of the Divine, or Kieran Gillen's really trippy comic book series was also just picked up as a TV show. I think that Image and Boom are probably the two publishers outside of the big two, Marvel and DC. They're doing the best job getting their properties in front of the right people in Hollywood. So this was a very big deal when this was greenlit with the Lumberjanes on Friday. It trended on Twitter, which is pretty amazing for a fringe comic book. So, that's really points and indicates a very strong fan base. So what does this mean? Well, when you option it, Fox starts to develop it, and they're going to see if they like the way it comes together, and they have someone working on a script. And then if they like it, it'll go into pre-production, where they'll do the casting. They might do some of the casting of the leads to begin with and see who they can put together as a package. And then once they feel like they have something strong there, they'll greenlight it. It'll move into pre-production, and then it'll move into production, post-production, and then you'll be able to see it. That's usually the way it goes. So this has been optioned, and they're very strongly contemplating the idea of making this movie. They're playing with it, and they want to see how it comes together. So that's the stage the Lumberjanes movie is currently in. It's not necessarily going to be made, but it has a much better, sorry, I made myself laugh there. It has a much better chance than any property that's not optioned. And it's actively being optioned. There are two ways you can option something. You can option something where you're like, I call dibs on that, and then you just sit on it. Or you can option something and say, okay, I'm having the screenwriter work on it, and we're going to actively try and develop it and move it into pre-production pretty fast. It's on the front burner. All right, so this is the way it's coming together. What is the Lumberjanes? Well, I've never read it, but the way it's being described is like a super feminist Buffy the Vampire Slayer at like a summer sleepaway camp. It's pretty much an all-female cast. They have some straight characters. They have some gay characters. Very diverse. It's basically, it's something that a certain demographic is going to go just crazy about. It's super niche. I would think maybe it would be a little bit better as a television show than a movie, unless they make some serious changes to it, because that's a really narrow demographic. It's almost kind of like Orange is the New Black. I think that's probably a good comparison between the two properties. And I don't know how wide Orange is the New Black's appeal is, beyond like being a Netflix show, right? I mean, every different medium and every different network and every different, whatever sphere you're in, you have a different bar. The bars at different places is for what qualifies as a success for you. For instance, the shows on the CW, the DC shows like Arrow, The Flash, etc. Sorry. They don't do numbers that would be considered strong enough for like a regular network. But the CW, they're tremendous. So I think that I'm curious to see if something like this could survive as a movie. Now, it's written by 3 women, Shannon Waters, Noelle Stevenson, and Brooke Allen. However, Fox and Boom, Boom has producers on it. I don't know how much they're involved in the actual developing of the property. But they've put a male writer on it, which I think a lot of people raised a lot of eyebrows, being like, that's a weird choice. But a guy named Will Widger, who has a script on the blacklist. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I forget which movie it was recently, but I saw a movie that had a script on the blacklist, and it was actually pretty poor. I was like, that should have stayed on, the do not make list. So I think that it's interesting. I'm very pleased that Fox is developing this. I'm very impressed with Boom's ability to get so many projects greenlit, or at least tentatively greenlit with Fox. But I am surprised at the lack of the involvement from the original creators, seems, in the property, and I'm curious as to which direction this is going to go. You're seeing more and more comic book properties be optioned by studios, etc., but you're seeing not so much the creators being involved in the creative process, which I think is weird, especially considering that the properties have worked at the best, like The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones. It isn't a comic book, but George R.R. Martin's very much involved in the series, at least from a publicity standpoint. And I think that the showrunners and creators of the show are very respectful of him as well. But those instances worked so well, you would think that, Hollywood would take a cue from that and be like, well, maybe we should involve the creators, right? But, Hollywood's a little slow to pick up on these things. So I'm curious to what you think. Does The Lumberjanes sound like something you would see? Do you think it would make a better movie or a better TV show? And what do you think of comic book creators being involved in their properties moving forward? Do you think it's important, or do you think this Will Widger guy can have no problem adapting this property, and he's a professional and he can do it? All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day, it has to do about an animated movie that's coming together, and it seems okay. It seems a little derivative. It seems like it seems derivative of the Minions franchise, Despicable Me. But we'll see. But first, let's talk about the project that's coming together, and then I want to have a little bit of a wider conversation about animation as a genre and the business opportunities that exist there. So it's called Henchmen, and it's being produced by something called Bronze Studios. Will Ferrell and Adam McKay's Gary Sanchez Productions was supposed to be involved, but citing scheduling conflicts, they had to drop out. Although I think that's just a polite way of saying they want to not be a part of this anymore, because if you really feel that something's going to be successful, you find a way, right? And I'm sure that this little animated movie would be happy to delay by a couple of months to make sure that they had Will Ferrell and Adam McKay's name on their film, but they've dropped out. But they're moving forward with it. It's based on a short by Adam Wood from 2014, and they actually have assembled a respectable voice cast. James Marsden, Rosario Dawson, Alfred Molina, Nathan Fillion, Jane Krakowski, Rob Riggle, and Craig Robinson. A lot of TV names, a lot of fringe names. And basically, this is about the Union of Evil, which is the Union of Henchmen, and they actually end up having to come together to save the world. So it's very Minions. It's like a human version of Minions almost. It's almost like Minions meets Office Space, especially with VillainCon and being explored in the upcoming Minions movie. I don't know what space that leaves for Henchmen. But if the writing is really good, maybe it could do okay. But what really interests me here is whether or not it's possible for an animated movie that's not made by the major studios at this point to break through to the audience. Because the animation field is very crowded alone just from the big players, right? The usuals, Pixar, DreamWorks Animation, Blue Sky Studios, Illumination Entertainment, Sony Animation's becoming very big. Paramount Animation's getting in there. Warner Brothers Animation's in there. And now you have these little guys trying to grab some crumbs. Not even a piece of the pie, just some crumbs as well. And so far we've had like some successful ones, and we've had some real duds, real failures. The Nut Job made $113 million worldwide. That's the best recent success. That's pretty darn good. That's why they're making The Nut Job too. The Book of Life, that was a very good animated film. Really worked hard on, Mexican heritage. That made $97.4 million worldwide. Then Legends of Oz, though, was a horrible flop, even though I thought it was a pretty solid animated movie. $18.6 million worldwide, and so was Strange Magic, but that only made $12.4 million worldwide. So as you can see, the odds are not good for these small little movies. And these are obviously very far away numbers from the 300+ million that other animated movies do. That's even considered not successful for the main companies. Like Home has to get to 400 million, and it's getting closer, but it's still not there to be considered for a sequel, right? So this also calls to mind the real backlash against Legends of Oz: Dorothy's Return. There was a lot of animosity towards that movie. People were angry about it. They were like, I hate that this movie exists. And it's like, what? So I'm curious, what do you think of Henchmen? Do you think you'll be more open to it? Why do you think people are so against anybody else even moving into the animation space? Why would they protect the big companies, right? And is there any room for them? And also, the big companies are so prolific and cover so many different areas. Not only is there any room for them in terms of, audience eyeballs, but just creatively, story-wise. As I said, this is derivative of what Illumination's doing with their Despicable Me franchise. I guess it's now a franchise with the Minions spinoff. But I think Henchmen just seems, I think you have to have a really original, exciting idea. Like The Nut Job, I guess, or The Book of Life, but still, even those movies, while they were able to make some headway, didn't get the kind of numbers necessary. So I can only hope that Bronze Studios has kept the budget down significantly for this animated movie. Alright, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to tweet me your one-sentence review for American Sniper, at Grace Randolph, hashtag Dolby Atmos. Also write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.